Today I'll show you how to create this animated fantasy map in Davinci Resolve. We'll look at the entire process step by step, starting with generating the assets in Midjourney all the way to exporting the final result. I've added this entire project, along with some additional assets, on my Gumroad page. It's free, but any donations you make will help support this channel. I'll leave a link in the description below. I'm here on the Midjourney website, and I think this is an excellent way to generate some assets for our project. I can enter a simple prompt up here, Fantasy World Game Map, 16-bit video game style. I'll hit enter. And I think we get some pretty cool results here. But I think I'd like to find a better style. One thing you can do is look up Midjourney sref codes. These are style values. I'm on the site sref.midjourney, and if I scroll through, you can see all these different styles. I found this one here earlier that I like. Has kind of a cartoony fantasy style to it. So I'll copy the sref here, and I'll go back to Midjourney and use it. So I've typed in a new prompt here, and then I'll append the sref to the end. So --sref, and then the number for that style. And I'll hit enter. And I like this style much better. I think I like this one the most. Let me upscale it and then download it to my computer. I'll press the upscale subtle button here. And now we have our upscaled result. So if I click on it, I can right click and save the image to my computer. Now let's generate a character that will walk on our map. I think it would be cool if our character was a warrior, had a sword and shield. Let's reuse the sref style here. So I'm gonna click on this. And this will make the warrior look in the same style as our image here. So I'll submit. Now note that I also said white background. Hopefully that will generate a white background behind our character. That'll make it easier to remove the background. And here we have some characters that were generated. I ran the prompt a few more times and I like this one. So once again, I'll upscale it. And then I'll download it when it's done. And now the upscale is done, so I'll click on it. I'll right click and I'll save it to my computer. Now before we use our assets in Davinci Resolve, let's clean them up a little bit. I'll open up the map file. So it's this PNG here that I made in Midjourney. This is the file we saw before. And I think we can just add a little more contrast and vibrance to it. So I'll add an adjustment here. I'll go to levels. And let's just boost the blacks a bit. Maybe boost the whites a little bit too. Get rid of that hazy look. So before, after. Before, after. Let's also increase the vibrance. So I'll just add a vibrance adjustment. You can use any program you have to do this. GIMP, Photoshop. Just make it a little brighter. Let's make the darks a little darker. Once again, I'll just boost up the blacks a bit. Maybe around there. You can adjust as you see fit. I'll close. And I like this result here, so I'll just export it as the final PNG. I'll call it map final. Now let's remove the background from our warrior character. I'll select File, Open, and we'll open the warrior here. Now you can see he has a white background. Let's use the Object Selection tool in Infinity Photo to remove the background. This is in Infinity Photo 2.6. So I'll click this tool here, Object Selection. It's going to process for a few seconds. Now we'll select over my character. And it does a pretty good first selection. I want a little bit more, so I'm going to do the selection brush. And let's select the sword. And make sure we get that part included too. Now we don't want the ground here. Looks like it didn't select it too much. Get a little bit of the handle. I'm going to unselect this middle part here. And now let's refine the selection. So I'll click the refine button here. That's just going to help us clean up the edges a little bit. Now I'm going to select new layer with mask. I'll click apply. And if I hide the original layer, you can see we've cut out our character here. Now let's add a colored background and see how good a job it did. I'll say new fill layer. Let's put it at the bottom. Let's make it something like green. And if we zoom in, we can see a couple places that didn't do a good job. So I'll expand the mask here. And using black, we can just paint out these parts. So sometimes you'll still need to do a little bit of cleanup work on these masks. So I'll just touch it up here, down here. I like a green background because it helps make it obvious where the green is shining through. Clean up this. If you want to paint something back in, use white. So I'll spend a few more minutes cleaning this up. And here we have our final result. Now let's use Davinci Resolve to actually start moving our character on the map. I've opened Davinci Resolve here. I'll create a new project. We'll call it Animated Map. I'll click Create. And now I'm on the main page here. Now by default, it's the Cut page. I like the Edit page better, so I'm going to click on this icon here, Edit page. And now you can have an interface that looks like this. Now I have the effects enabled here. Let me turn that off for the moment. The first thing we want to do is import our media, by which I mean our PNGs of the map and the character. So I'll click this button here that says Media Pool. And this is a toggle. When you click it, it goes on and off. So I'll keep it on. Then I'll right click in this area here. And I'm going to say Import Media. And now I've navigated to my directory here where I have these PNGs. I'll just select them both. And I'll say Open. And now you can see they're in my list here. Now we're going to create this animation using Fusion. I know Fusion is an intimidating topic for some people, but projects like this are a great way to learn. Everything I show you in this video is a very common Fusion task that will be useful if you continue to use it more in the future. So we're going to create a Fusion composition. So I'm going to click the Effects tab here. Then make sure you have Toolbox selected up top. And I'm going to click the search bar here. That'll let me search all the subfolders. I'm going to say Fusion Comp. In here we have a Fusion composition. So I'll click and drag it to the timeline here. And I'll put it at the beginning. Now if I play it right now, of course nothing happens because we haven't done anything yet. But one thing I want you to notice when I added that Fusion composition is that it also created the timeline for our project. This is important because the timeline shows us what the resolution of our project is. So I'll right click on the timeline. I'll go to Timelines. Now I'll click Timeline Settings. And here you can see the resolution, 1920 by 1080. Now I'm fine with that in this case. But if you want to change it, you could uncheck Use Project Settings, and you could modify it from there. But I'll put this back. I'll click OK. And now I'm going to select my Fusion composition. Make sure there's the orange box around it when you click on it. And now I'm going to click the Fusion tab here, Fusion. And now we have this new workspace. Now how this workspace looks might be a little bit different for you. I have two viewers here. I only want to see one at the moment. So I'm going to click on this box here. And that just gives me one viewer. If you want to go back to two viewers, you can click this box here. And you can see it's double again. Now down here is the node workspace. If you've worked with graphics programs before, you may have used layers. Fusion uses a node workflow. It can be a little tricky to understand at first, but with some practice like this project here, you'll get the hang of it. By default, we just have the media out node. And typically this is the end result of all our operations. What goes to the media out node is going to show up on our timeline. So let's add a background node to actually show something. I'll click this button here, background, and I'll drag it onto my canvas. Now so far nothing is showing up. This is because I have to connect it to the media out node. So I'll click this output here, and I'll drag it over to media out. Now when I connected it, I didn't see anything here. That's because I have the right viewer selected. That's what this white dot means. Let me turn on the left viewer. That's the one I actually have shown. And now it's displayed there. If I have the two viewers shown, you'll see it's in both of them. I could turn off the right one, or I could turn off the left one. So just make sure you have the correct one selected. I'll turn off the right one, and I'll just show the left viewer. Now this doesn't look very interesting because our background is black by default. When you have a node selected, there's the Inspector tab over here. If you don't see the Inspector tab here, make sure it's highlighted white here. Once again, this is a toggle, so if I click it, it goes on and off. So I'll click it so it's on. And this is basically the properties of whatever node we have selected. So if I select Media Out, notice how the Inspector tab changes. I'll select Background. I get a different set of options now. As you can probably guess, this one here is the background color. So let's click this. And let's make it some type of green. I'll click OK. And now you can see we have our simple Fusion composition. It's just outputting a green background. And you can also see the resolution here, 1920 by 1080. This is because when we put the background node into our media out, it automatically chose the timeline resolution. So now let's bring in our map. We still have the media pool option here, so I'll click this, media pool. And here's our map. I'll drag this onto the node workspace here. I'll let go. And you can see it's called media in. So this is an input to our node composition. I'll hide the media pool here. Let me show the two viewers again, just so you can see how that works. If I click this button here, I can take media in, and I can put it on the right side. So this is kind of useful if you want to see multiple nodes at the same time. But in this case, we don't really need to do that. I just want to show our final output there. Now the big question is, how do we actually get our media in connected to our media out? Well, we're going to do something that's a very common operation in Fusion. We're going to use a merge node. So the merge node is this node here, merge. So I'll click and drag it here. Now I'm going to do is I'm going to let go when my arrow is right over this line here. You can see it's highlighted. I'll let go. And now there's a merge node between the background and the media out. This means we can add in another node from the side. So with my media in node selected, the gray is the output of the node. You can see that's the output of all these other ones. I'll click and drag it down here. And now it's merged into the result. Now the map is actually so big that it's going off the screen here. So we want to resize it a little bit. Now your first reaction might be to select the media in and go to the Inspector tab and look for something to resize it with. But actually that's not the way Fusion works. The way we resize things is to use a transform node. This is another super common node that we'll be using a lot. So I can choose this node here, transform. I'll click and drag it, and I'll put it after the media in. I'll let go, and you can see our media in is flowing through the transform node, which is being merged with the background, and it's going to our final output over here. Now if I click on the transform node, in the Inspector tab, this node does give me the properties to modify our result. So let's zoom out a bit, and I'll make it smaller. And if I make it too small, now you can actually see how our map is over the background there. I can also click and drag over these center parameters to move it to a different position. Y is up and down. There's all sorts of operations you can do here. You can adjust the angle. You can adjust the aspect ratio. Now, if you do too much stuff and you really mess up all the parameters, it's very easy to reset it. Just click this little arrow on the circle here, reset, and now it's back to normal. But I just want to change the size a little bit, so I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. And I think there is pretty good. So here we have a simple map composition. And if I go back to my Edit tab, if I play through the composition, nothing is really moving, but you can see we are displaying the map in the composition here. Let's select this and go back to the Fusion page. Now let's create an animated path on our map. To do this, I'm going to use a paint node. So over here on my toolbar, it's this paintbrush here. So I'll click this paint node here. I'll click and drag it. Now this one actually doesn't need to be merged in. We can just drop it directly on the line here. So make sure your cursor is over that line. Let go. And now we have the paint node there. So once again, our output is flowing from the background and the media in. They're being merged here. It's going through this paint node, which isn't doing anything at the moment. And it's going to our final output there. Now when I select the paint node, notice how we suddenly have these operations up here. If I select something else, they go away. But if I select the paint node, they're there. The control we care about is this one here, polyline stroke. So I'll select this, and I can make a path. So I'll just put some path here. Let's say this is where we want our character to go. And I'll end it there. Now with my paint node selected, over here on the Inspector tab, we can control how the stroke looks. So I can change the color. Let's make it red. I'll click OK. I can expand brush controls. I can change the size of it. I can also change the softness. Let's zoom in here. Let's make it a little more solid, like that. And if I expand stroke controls, if you increase the spacing here, you can actually get a dotted effect. And I kind of like those dots like that. This will look interesting when we animate the dots. Now if I click off the paint node, notice how all those controls go away. Now what if I want to go back and change it? To do that, click on the paint node again. Then select the modifiers tab. This is the stroke we added, so make sure this stroke is selected. And then if you zoom in, you can click on the control points for the stroke and rearrange it. These controls up here will determine how it behaves. You can make something round if you want. If you want to insert a point, make sure you have this tool selected here. And then click on the middle point. And you've added a new point. So we'll leave it like that. Now let's animate our stroke. With my paint node selected, and I'm on the modifiers tab with the polyline stroke here. Let's go down to the bottom. You can see an option called right on. And look what happens when I modify the endpoint here. You can see on my screen, it's going back and forth. I can do the same thing with the beginning point. Like that. But really in our video, all I want to do is start there. And then I want to animate throughout the video and finish there. We can do this with keyframing. So let's go back to the beginning of our clip here. I'm going to click and drag. So I'm at the start over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set my right on value to 0. So I'm going to click and drag it like this. And this is how I want the line to begin. So I'm going to create a keyframe here by clicking this little diamond. So I'll click this. And what a keyframe does will be more obvious when we create the second one. So let's scroll to the end of our video. Now at this point, I want the right on to be fully 100%, 1.0. So I'm going to click and drag it this way. And it automatically makes a keyframe at that point. You can see this little arrow. So if I click back, notice how it went back to the beginning of my video and the right on is 0. I can navigate to the other keyframe. It goes to the end of my video and the right on value is 1.0. And what a tool like Fusion can do is find the values between your keyframes. So as I scroll through my video, notice how it's automatically filling in that line because it's interpolating the values between our keyframes. Let's go back to the edit page and let's actually play it. I'll play the video and you can see the result we're getting. Let's go back to Fusion. Notice how on our Fusion timeline, we also have a white mark at the beginning and end of our timeline. That signifies the keyframes we created on the selected node. Now let's add in our warrior character. So once again, I'll go to the media pool here. I have my warrior. I'll click and drag him. I'll put him there. Let's close the media pool. I'll drag the media out over to give a little more room. Now one thing we can do is rename the nodes to make it a little more clear what's what. So I can right click on media in 2 here. I'll select rename and I'll call him warrior. I'll click OK. I'll select media in 1 over here. Now when I right click, I rename, or I can press F2. Let's press F2. I'll call this map. So you can rename nodes to make it more clear what's happening. So just like before, we want to use a merge node to bring our warrior into the flow. Now I could manually drag a merge node in there. A quick shortcut is to drag the output of a node to the output of another node here, then let go, and it'll automatically merge them in like that. So you can see the pipeline we have going here. Background is being merged with the map. We're painting on our path. Then we're bringing in the warrior, and we're sending it all to the media out node. Now I want to resize my warrior, so I'll click on him. And once again, we don't see any options here. Remember what we did before, we added a transform node. So we'll do the same thing again. I'll click transform here, I'll drag it in, and I'll let go. Let's move that up. So now with the transform node selected, I can zoom out, and let's resize our warrior here. You can use the on-canvas controls if you want. Let's zoom in a bit. Let's make him a little smaller. Let's put him right about here. That looks pretty good. So I'll zoom out here. Now you can see how the character looks on our map. Now we're almost finished here. Let's just keyframe the warrior. First, I'll move the playhead to the beginning of my clip. So now we're at the start here. I'll select my transform node, and I'm just going to keyframe this center position. So I'm going to click the diamond here because I like where the warrior's at. So I'll click this. Now let's move to the end of the clip. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the warrior to the final position. So I'll click and drag him. I'll put him like right there. And it's keyframed automatically. So let's play the video to see what happens. I'll press play. Our warrior is moving straight up, and the path is moving to the side, and they end up at the final position at the same time. Now, of course, we want our warrior to move along the path. I've looked into several methods of doing this. Every method has its own advantages and disadvantages. I'll show you one method in this video. Let me know down in the comments if you want to see some other techniques. So let's go to the end of our clip. Let's click on that transform node for the warrior. And if we zoom in, we see his path here. Now the way we can actually make him follow the path is to just alter this line so it follows the dots here. So I'll click on a point on the path, and I'll just drag it so it follows the line. I'll click on another point, move it up there, click on another point, put it there, and we'll just trace the line there. Keep doing this. Note that up here you have these controls if you want to change the way a point is. For example, maybe you accidentally make a point curved. Just click on this point and select straight line again. Let's go down. Let's make a point there. I'm just tracing my original path. And let's get him there. I'll zoom out. Now let's go back to the beginning of our video. And if we play, our warrior is following the path. Now the only thing you have to keep in mind is if you modify the original path. Let's go back to the end of the video here. So if we go to our paint node, let's say we want to move this over here. Maybe I have another point here I want to add. Make him go this way. I'll go back to my warrior's transform here. Again, make sure you're at the end of the video. I'll zoom in. I'll add another point here. Make him go that way. Maybe I'll make this go here. Add another point. Looks like it's following the line pretty well. Let's zoom out. Let's play it again. And our warrior is still following the path. Like I said, there are other ways of moving a character along a path. One option is to use your character's image as the brush for the paint node over here, but I found some glitches with that technique. So I prefer the method I've shown you a little bit more. Let's do one final touch that I think would be pretty cool, and that's to add some fog to our composition. And like before, we'll just be doing that by adding a node to our pipeline here. The main thing is to just know what node to add. There's one I like called fast noise. So I'll select the effects here, and in the search box, I'll type fast noise. You can see the node here. Let's click and drag it. I'll put it here. I'll close the effects. Now we'll do our merge trick to bring it into our pipeline. I'll click the output, drag it to the output of this merge, and here we have our fast noise. You can see the effect it had over here. With fast noise selected, I can check out the inspector tab over here, and there's a bunch of different options we can do to change how the fog looks. I think the best one is the scale here, so let's change that. I'll increase it a little bit, and now you can start to see some more shape to the fog. I think there is pretty good. Now if I play the video, it's a little boring with the fog just sitting still. Let's keyframe it. So I'll go to the beginning of the video with my fast noise selected. The center is at XY here, 0.5. I think that's fine. Let's just click the diamond. Let's scroll to the end of our video. And let's move the center. I'm going to just click and drag on these numbers. Let's say it goes this way. Let's move the fog up a little bit. We'll do that. And you can see by the red diamond here, it automatically created the keyframe. So let's play through our video. And you can see the fog is moving. Now I also want to maybe remove the fog in the middle of the area so we can see our character better. To do this, I'll create a mask. Now for all these nodes, you see this blue input. If you hover over the blue input, you can see it's called the effect mask. That allows us to block out part of that node's effect. Over here we have the polygon options. So let me draw a polygon. With my polygon node selected, I'll just draw a shape on the map here. This is the part where I don't want the fog to appear. I'll just put it around there. Tighten it up a little bit. Now I'll connect this polygon to the fast noise. So I'll drag the output to the mask and I'll let go. So you can see the effect it had there. Now of course this is the opposite of what I want to have happen. So I'll select the polygon. And in the inspector tab, I'll click invert. And now we have the opposite effect. We've cleared out the fog in this middle area. And the cool thing is we can soften the edge so it's not as harsh. So with the polygon selected again, I'll increase the value of soft edge. Maybe like so. Let's go back to the edit tab and play back our video. Go here and let's play. And now we have our character moving with the fog effect around him. From here, you can export this file into the video format of your choosing. I'll select the export tab down here. It's called deliver. It has this rocket ship. And now we have our export options over here. For the most part, I don't change too much. I'll call it fantasy map. Then you can choose where you want to save it on your computer. I'll save it here. And then you can choose the output format. I'll choose MP4. There's other quality settings down here, but usually the default is fine for me. Then you click add to render queue. Now this doesn't render it yet. You actually have to click render all. So I'll click this. And our file is processing. And when it's done, it'll say it's completed. Then you can navigate to where it exported on your video and play it. And here's our final result. Remember that if you'd like to download this project and some more assets, check out the link in the description below. It's free, but any donations you make will help support this channel. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.